Good evening, colleagues. You're welcome to another wonderful day of academic exploration. We are going to be talking about the organization environment today as part of our topic for today. So you're welcome on board. Why do we need organization? Or why do we have organization? Or why organization? Organization came into existence as a result of the awareness that if we come together, we can achieve more results than working in isolation. So organization, through collaborative action, members of an organization can achieve what we call synergistic effect. Synergy is 1 plus 1 is equals to 3, not 2. Can you see? That is to say that if we add two things, it gives a multiple effect. So, through collaborative action, members of an organization can achieve a synergistic effect and enable objectives to be achieved that could not be attained by the effort of individuals on their own. Can you see? So when we come together to work together, certainly we achieve more than we can achieve as individuals. So that is the reason behind organization. That is the rationale behind the organization. Classification by major purpose. If we want to classify organization according to their purpose, according to the objectives of that organization, we have, for instance, an economic organization. We have, for instance, mutual organization. We have, of course, public service organization. We have social enterprise organization. We have protective organization. We have religious organization. We have educational organization. And of course, we have voluntary community organization. However, in our world today, or in the world we live today, organization can serve multiple purposes. They have more than one goal, although it is often possible to identify a single predominant goal. The core goal of an organization. We can still identify it by looking at the organization, seeing what they do, then we can actually identify them according to that particular goal. Now we have actually mentioned public and private organization. When we talk about public organization, public organization is actually created by the government and financed through taxation, the tax you pay. And of course, public sector organization is accountable to the electorate, is accountable to the public. Then of course, in terms of private enterprise, it's owned and financed by individuals, partners, or shareholders, and they are accountable to their owners or members. You see, they are accountable to shareholders in the case of equity organization or joint stock company, where they pool resources from different shareholders and of course stock holders. And the organization is mainly accountable to most of these people who have provided fund to fund the organization's objective. And another difference between the public sector and private sector is that for the public sector, do not generally have profit as their goal. They don't actually put profit as their main goal, but have a kind of political or welfare purpose. Can you see? So in that sense, public sector, actually their main interest is to actually solve some of the problems in society. They look into the welfare of people within a a given society or a given nation. In terms of also, they are politically oriented because, of course, public sector also has some political roles to play. And in fact, the government of the day brings their policy, which, of course, the public sectors execute. Then, in terms of the private sector, their main aim is commercial. Can you see? Their main aim is commercial, and in fact, they have to make profit to survive. And of course, they need the return on capital. Return on capital is the return to those who have contributed, the profit those who have contributed get for their investment into that organization. And those returns come in the form of dividend when an organization decides to share their profit margin, among shareholders. It comes in the form of dividends to shareholders, return on capital employed, and of course, their interest is also what is their market standing within a given industry, and of course, their level of sale. How much are they selling? What is the quantity of product they sell? So, private enterprises is actually focused on profit making. And of course, without profit, private organization will die a natural death. Although initially I have actually mentioned that the public sector main goal is not really profit, but currently now, in the current world we live, the public sector has now been, forced to actually look into also profit as their goal. Because without profit, public sector cannot also survive. So somehow now there is also a competition between public and as well as private sector enterprises. That is why you see now that, in fact, of course, the public sector organizations are also trying to earn revenue so that, of course, they can be able to meet some of their goals and targets. All right, so we'll progress. 7 aspects of the public sector. There are, of course, 7 aspects of the public sector. For instance, one of the aspects is the central government, which include the federal and national government, the civil service, and of course, the armed forces or the armed defense force, and of course, the national judiciary. Those are the central government wing of the public sector. And of course, we have regional government, which includes states, province, provincial, and of course, prefectural government. Your provinces, Gauteng province, and of course, other provinces within South Africa, and of course, Western Cape province, and Limpopo province, and all the rest. So all these are different provinces that within South Africa, and this form under regional government, falls under regional government in terms of public sector. And of course, we talk about local government, which include city, municipal, and of course, county government. Can you see? City, for instance, you hear about city of Johannesburg, as a good example of local government. And of course, in different countries also, local government is the third tier of government. We have the federal, the provincial or state government, and of course we have local government. And of course we have also what we call under the 7 aspects of public sector, we have also what we call the public-private partnership, which is a situation where government decide to also take shares from private individuals in order to execute some of the government function or public management or objective within the public sector. That is where now government decide to pool resources with private individuals, where government is also a stakeholder. Then we have also nationalized industry. When we talk about nationalization of industry, that includes state-owned commercial undertakings. And when we use the term nationalization, it actually simply means that probably that particular consign or that particular undertaking was sometime private organization or a privatized organization. Now government takes over. When government takes over organization, it becomes a nationalized organization. You see, in terms of this context. And over the years, we have seen in most of the communist nations where the government takes over some of the private organization, and it becomes, of course, a nationalized industry. And of course, we also have arm's length executive agencies, including outsourced activities on behalf of government. That include outsourced activities on behalf of government. That is related to arm's length executive agencies. And we have also government-funded agencies. For instance, in the UK, we have National Health Service, as a very good example of government-funded services. And of course, within entrepreneurship also in South Africa, there are so many government-funded agencies to support entrepreneurial activities within South Africa. All right. Then we'll talk about not-for-profit organization, which of course include charities, those who invest in charities, those whose interests are in charity, and of course private societies. Private societies like, of course, clubs, social club, and all the rest. That's welfare society and all the rest. Then we have religious like your churches. It is considered as not-for-profit organization, but also, however, in current modern world, churches are also making profits. Can you see? So on the basis of that, you cannot just say churches are non-for-profit organization, which is why in some climate or in some clime, there is now emphasis that churches should think about paying tax, because they are making profit with, in fact, of course, some of the pastors using private jets and, of course, using assorted cars and, of course, enjoying life like normal business. So on the basis of that, churches at times may not also be classified as a not-for-profit organization. Then, of course, we have some NHS hospitals. I think that is applicable more to UK. That is not actually interested in profit. For instance, we have Doctors Without Border, as a very good example of not-for-profit organization. And of course, UK universities in the United Kingdom have also been classified as not-for-profit university. Well, I think I need to also find out why it is classified, because of course, the amount of money that is charged to foreign students by universities in UK is quite enormous. So that can actually, that is actually a little bit contradictory, in terms of UK universities. And of course, not-for-profit government departments have been included, and of course, that form part of course, the public sector that I have also mentioned to you, and of course, the local authorities. So the old distinction between private, public, and not-for-profit sectors have been blurred, just like I explained to you, as charities have taken on an ever-increasing role in the delivery of services. Tough competition for funds and growing public scrutiny have led many charities to adopt practices once more commonly associated with commercial sectors. Can you see? So that is to say that we cannot just say most of these organizations are not for profit. The current world we live is actually emphasizing the need for organization to earn profit to remain alive. So as a result of that, some of the not-for-profit organizations seems to be making profit. For instance, most of the NGOs, they are also profit-making ventures, even if they are funded by some charity organization. But some endeavor to make profit out of it. All right, we'll progress. Now we'll move to social enterprise organization. Social enterprise organizations have a primary concern with social purpose and the creation of social value. Their interest is also part of a non-profit organization, but their interest is actually to create social values in society. Example of social enterprise organization can be gleaned from the Gremium Bank. Look at your case study in chapter 3, the case study, the Gremium Bank. And of course, the Eden Project case study for part 3, case study for part 2, and of course, Eden Project case study for part 3. Just read it and just get a clue of what social enterprise organization normally do. All right. Then common features of organization. Whatever the difference between organizations, common factors include people. Can you see? Whatever the distinction, whatever the differences between organizations, common factors remains. Can you see? And those common factors includes people. There is no organization without people. Can you see? People man organization. People work in organization. So organization must have people to function. So whether it is a prison, whether it is a church, whether it is an academic institution, whether it is a police service, whether it is a protective service, whether it's a defense organization, without people, organization cannot function. So people is the most important element within an organization. And of course, the next common factors in organization include objectives. Every organization has a purpose for existence. Can you see? And that purpose is their objective. They are their goals, why they are in existence. So every organization, whether a community service, whether a church service, or whether a police organization, or whether a hospital, they must have purpose and objective of why they are in existence. Can you see? So every organization, that is a common factor in organization. Every organization have a purpose, the objective, their direction. An objective gives direction in terms of what they are there for. And of course, the next one is that all organizations have structure. Can you see? All organizations have structure, which include the building of organization and how that organization functions, the roles within the organization. Structure can include how we function, who relate to who, and also it can include the layout of the organization within that particular structure or the bigger structure of an organization. So, every organization has structure. Of course, we can say that currently now we are having a mutual organization where people can relate through the internet, just like I'm doing with you now, but still I am seated in a structure interacting with you. That is to say that somehow, even when we try our possible best to say we are working within a mutual organization or online organization, there must also be a structure that is covering us. So every organization has a structure. Whether we are working online, where we must have a particular office, a particular head office, where we call our organization. Okay, see? So in that sense, every organization has got structure. Then the next one is, and all these three factors within organization are integrated by management. Can you see? That is to say, every organization must be managed. Can you see? So management is the most important thing that integrate the people, the objective, and of course, the structure. Is that clear? So management integrate all these factors for an organization to function effectively and achieve the purpose of being. Can you see? The purpose why they were created in the first place. Is that clear? Fantastic. All right. So common features of an organization continues. Whether an organization is a local authority, whether an organization is an airport, whether it is a car manufacturer, whether it is a hospital, whether it is a university, whether it is a hotel, whether it is a leisure center, whether it is a quarry works, whether it is a government department, whether it is a pharmaceutical company, whether it is a building society, whether it is a railway society, whether it is a prison, whether it is a firm of accountants, whether it is a school, whether it is a charity shop, as far as it is an organization, it must have people, interaction and effort of people in order to achieve the objective of the organization, and channeled and coordinated by structure, directed and controlled via management. So all these things must have people. Different organizations that I have elaborated and mentioned to you now have people. They have, of course, objective, and they have structure, and of course, they must have management to control most of these other variables or other factors that I have mentioned. Is that clear? Great. We progress. The nature of organization. Common concern with the basic activities of organizations and management. If we want to talk about the nature of organization, considerable differences in goals and objectives. And see, organization may have considerable differences in goals and objectives, procedures, and method of operation. Their structure, organization structure, system and style of management, orientation, and behavior of members within that organization. Can you see? For instance, we can say common concern with basic activities of organization. If we look at, for instance, a maximum security closed prison and a major research institution. So these two organizations are different worlds. They may have different ways of operation, different way of doing things, their method, their approach, and of course the structure. A prison is a high wall environment where people pass through a lot of hurdles before you can approach somebody inside a prison. Unlike a university environment, of course, there are still restrictions in university environment, but of course, at least there is a little freedom in terms of accessing the university environment compared to a maximum security prison. So these are two different organizations. And of course, different organizations, hospitals may also differ from universities. And of course, a manufacturing organization may, of course, differ from a service organization. So every organization have their roles in terms of how they operationalize their business. All right, we'll progress. Now we come to the topic, the open system model of organization. Open system model of organization. What is that model actually emphasizing? The model is emphasizing that every organization has an objective. And in order for organization to achieve this objective, they take resources from the external environment. Can you see? They take resources which has been released by the environment as an output from other systems. Now they take those resources, and those resources become a kind of input for the organization. So these resources and all these materials that have been taken, or it could be raw materials for a productive organization, they are transformed. Can you see? They are transformed or converted into finished product. And of course, that is released also back to the environment as outputs. Can you see? So in that sense, organization is conceived as an open system. Can you see? Open system in the sense that they take resources from the environment, turn it into a finished product, and of course release it to the external environment. Can you see? For either consumption or services. So meeting people and external people's need. Is that clear? So when they speak about organization as an open system, this is actually what is simply referred. That organization depend on resources from the external environment, turn it into a finished product, and of course, contribute back to the external environment, and other people takes over the finished product. That finished product can become even a raw material for another organization. Can you see? So that is an organization operating within an open environment. All right. So these are just the diagram, open system model environmental influences, general economic health of national industry, opportunity of stricter pollution control legislation, threat of stricter pollution control legislation, competition, shareholders, and of course culture. All these things are factors that will also influence an organization that are within the environment. And of course, the open system model, which is of course the input. So the input are most of those things the organization have taken from the outside environment. For instance, now, if it is a servicing organization, for instance, some of the things the organization must have taken from the external environment, complaint products, factored product, staff members, human resources. These are taken from the external environment. And of course, technology. These are taken from the external environment. Of course, management, sales, technical expertise. These are taken from external environment, of course, which include the human resources management. And of course, finance. Finance is taken from the external environment. Either you are borrowing from the bank or you are getting resources from contributors or the shareholders. And of course, subcontractors for installation, wiring, commissioning, and of course, customers. All these are within the external environment. And these inputs are transformed. Can you see? Transformation of these inputs. For instance, if it is a service organization, comfortable and safe environment for customers' business, design of system, selling of system expertise, provide customers with quality service, staff development, project management of customers, customer order, site preference, innovation, internal and external communication, management commitment to customer and staff, provide solution to customer. All these provide solution to customers' problems. And of course, these are the outputs in terms of organization operating within an open system. For instance, invoices, satisfied and committed staff, reputation for excellence, installation that are fit for purpose, and of course, finally, satisfied customers. So this is a very good example of an organization operating within an open system. And here is the organization goal. The goal of an organization is to become a market leader within the environment, growth for the organization to grow, because every organization must grow. If you are not growing, of course, the next thing is that you are out of the market or you are out of business. So you need to grow. Profitability, like I mentioned earlier, no organization can survive without profit. Even now, government organizations are pressured to also earn profit. Then, of course, to be the best in our field, to be the best in your field. That is one of the aim and goal of organization. to invest in our people and view them as our greatest asset. And of course, to be professional and honest in our business dealing. And of course, that will ultimately lead to delighted customers. Open system continuum. How do we measure? Open system model, measure of achievement. Measure of achievement could actually come in the form of repeat business. People may come back again to you to patronize you. Customer questionnaires. Can you see? That is also how to measure the achievement, where you, of course, distribute questionnaire to customers to get their views and opinion about how you have actually patronized them. Budgets, expenditure, cash flow, profit, etc. All this will also inform in terms of the achievement. Bigger budget will reflect that the organization is actually making profit and, of course, expanding. Margin performance, the performance of the organization, the margin in terms of their performance within the industry, and, of course, their internal performance. Staff appraisal, general feedback, appraisal of staff in terms of performance. And of course, how staff also evaluate the organization. Internal staffs also evaluate organization to tell organization how they are performing in terms of how they deal with them also. Because internal staff are also internal customers of the organization. Free of charge work, kind of after service support. Volume of work in terms of sales, relationship with specifier, for instance, architects, and of course consumers, and government agencies, environmental stroke head office, environmental health stroke fire officer, support from group board. These are ways to, of course, measure the achievements of an organization within the open system model. All right. Environmental influences on organization. Like I told you, the environment influences what we do in an organization or what takes place in an organization. So what are those environmental influences that affect organization or that influence an organization? Economic activities within a country affect organization. Can you see? Economic activities in terms of inflation, deflation, those affect organization. Can you see? You cannot operate within an organization and you say the economic activity is not affecting you. Even now, economic activity not only within your nation, but economic activity within the global environment. Can you see? That is to say that the economic activities in America can even be affecting South Africa. Can you see? And of course, the economic activity in South Africa can have an impact on activities, economic activities in America. So the world is now a kind of a fused environment, a kind of a global village, a compacted village. Can you see? And of course, social attitude. Social attitude of the people within the environment where your organization is operating has an influence on how you behave and how you trade. Can you see? For instance, you cannot go to Saudi Arabia and start selling a very toxic drink because their social norms does not permit that. Can you see? Or you cannot go to a different environment and start selling what they forbid as food. Can you see? So their cultural, their social attitude, what they accept, what they embrace, I think that also will have an impact in terms of how you do your business and how you relate with people. And of course, another environmental influence, local and national government policy. Government policy affects every organization. Just like it affects every individual within a particular country, it also affects organization. So certainly, local and national government policy will have a great impact or will influence the way organizations do their business within a particular environment. Can you see? Like, for instance, in South Africa, you can see so many employment laws that are issued every year or that are promulgated every year by government to protect workers. And at times you see the business complaining that most of this law is affecting their business. Can you see? That they are not willing to invest in South Africa because of so many labor laws, So these are government policies, which of course affect business. So if you want to operate within South Africa, you must operate within the confine of the South African law and policies. Is that clear? And of course, trade union. Can you see? Trade union also affect business. Can you see? Trade union is a conglomeration of workers that want a kind of to protect their members, that want better working environment and of course better working condition for members of their union. So they protect their people. So for the fact that they are there to protect their people in terms of wage payment, in terms of condition of work, that will also influence how we do business within a particular environment. The power of trade union to negotiate, the power of trade union to bargain, those are things we have to also put into perspective if you are working in a given environment. And of course, the customers within a particular environment will also have a major influence in the way we operate. Can you see? The customers within a particular environment, their likes and their dislikes, all these things will have an impact. Can you see? There are in countries where customers are very much informed. Can you see? So you must also think about how you can actually manage most of these customers by giving them the best that they desire. Can you see? And of course, we talk about culture. Culture has an influence. And every country has their own culture. Every locality has their own culture. And this culture will have major influence. And of course, other organizations within an organization will influence an organization in terms of competition, in terms of their competitive styles, in terms of their human resources, their labor, in terms of their competency, in terms of their human capital. Can you see? All these things will affect also or will influence another organization within that particular environment. And of course, employers association, which is the opposite of union, will also have an impact. Can you see? So will influence how you do business. Because if you belong to an employer association, there are certain things you almost agree to in certain situations. So you cannot say, okay, if they have agreed that they will be paying a particular wage or selling at a particular amount, and you are paying above the wage agreed upon by the association. Because, of course, employer association is also meant to protect the interests of employers. And, of course, we talk about pressure group. Pressure group, a kind of political groups, It could be youth movement that can also influence government in terms of certain decision, So pressure group could be youth group, that whose interest is actually to influence the decision of government. So that can also have an influence on organization. And of course, the Learning and Skill Council, can you see? These are also other aspects. CBI can also have an influence on organization. International relations, can you see? Between a foreign organization, between two countries, can also, of course, also affect or influence an organization. Can you see? If the relationship, for instance, between India and Singapore are not cordial, certainly an Indian organization may think twice before going to such kind of a country to operate. Can you see? So, and of course, competitors within the industry will also influence, of course, what we do as an organization. The climate, organization climate. Can you see? The climate of a given environment also, whether it is hot weather, whether it is cold weather, it will also affect how we do business in a given environment. environment. For instance, if you look at some of the climatic challenges that have affected the world over the years, for instance, we hear about hurricane in some part of America. We hear about tsunami in some part of Asia. And of course, we hear some more different typhoon earthquakes in Japan and the rest. All these things will have an influence on an organization that is intending or planning to open a business in those kind of environment. Is that clear? Fantastic. All right. Then shareholders or providers of finance will also have an influence. Can you see? If shareholders want maximum profit from their investment, that will also influence how organization does their business or do their business. Can you see? Then, of course, suppliers. Suppliers, those who supply raw materials to an organization will also have an influence on the activities of an organization. Then technological innovations within a given environment will also have an impact on organization. Now, organizations that are on top of their games in terms of technology are sometimes ahead of others, and may actually be the leaders within that particular industry or within that particular market. So these are some of the factors, some of the common factors that can actually influence an organization within a very broad environment, within the environment that the organization is operating. All right. Then we'll move to the next one, which is, of course, pastor analysis. Pastor analysis actually simply refers to the political, the economic, the social, the technological, the environmental, and of course, the legal analysis, which is, of course, pastor. I think it would be, for convenience sake, I think it would be much more better to move the economic before the social. You see, which is political, economic, social, technological, environmental, and of course legal. When we talk about political, party politics, attitude to ownership and international relationship, the politics of a particular party within a given nation, can you see, affects organization. An organization must, of course, study most of these party politics, their attitude to ownership. Can you see? Ownership, is the party or political party emphasizing private ownership, or they are emphasizing public ownership, or they are emphasizing nationalism, which is, of course, public ownership. I see. Those are the things we have to look. You have to also look into if you are intending to venture into a given environment for business. Then, of course, the economic. Every organization needs to study the economic policy of an environment they want to invest. For instance, the GDP of a country, the inflation rate of a country need to be looked into. If you remember in 2018, for instance, in South Africa, you can see that within some few months, there was heavy fluctuation in the rand, and of course, South Africa had almost 30 finance ministers at a go. Can you see? Which is, of course, part of that economic decision, whether somebody should be in best position to man a particular position. Inflation rate, interest rate of a nation affects business. Can you see? The rate of borrowing, can you see? The rate you pay as interest for borrowing, and of course, consumer expenditures. What is the expenditure of consumers? Are they low spending consumers, or they are high spending consumers? So how do they spend? Are they the type that save, or are they the ones that spend their money, liquidity and the flow of money within a given environment. Those are the things you have to also analyze as a going concern, as a business venturing into a particular environment. Then, of course, we talk about socio-cultural, for instance, values, lifestyle, and demographics. Can you see? What is the value system of that particular environment? You need to study the value system. Can you see? You need to study the value system of that particular environment, before you can actually set up a business there. The lifestyle of the people. What is their lifestyle? What is their lifestyle? Are they the fun-loving people, or they are conservative? They have a conservative lifestyle. All those things also will actually influence, or you need to also put those into perspective before you venture into a given environment. For instance, the demographic features of a given country. Like in Europe, we have so many old people. So if you're venturing there, you should be thinking about product that will actually make the old people happy, or take care of the old people, in some part of Europe. Whereas in Africa, we have a kind of a lot of youth population, young men and young boys. So you should also be looking into things that can actually make the young men or young boys happy, So before you venture into that particular environment, if your product is not related, or your product is not properly aligned to what the demography of that particular environment needs, certainly you need to think twice before venturing into that particular client. Then, of course, we talk about technology. There is a need for also organization to be at the top of the game when it comes to technology. New product and services. Look into new product and services that are coming on board. What will change the gameplay? What to be on top of your game? Can you see? And of course, research and development brings about new innovations, new technology. Can you see? So these are also very important things that an organization have to also analyze. What technology do we have? And what kind of technology does our competitor have? That will also inform our decision in terms of venturing into a particular environment. And of course, environmental such as, of course, the green agenda, energy and pollution. Green agenda emphasizes that the world should promote a kind of green environment. Can you see? Instead of polluting the environment, emphasis should be a kind of green agenda, And of course, emphasis should also be on renewable energies, instead of course, energies that deplete and pollute the environment. A very good example could also be now this electric cars that the world is now thinking about going into. If we can actually expand in terms of electric car, products like petroleum, oil will be a bygone products. So probably nobody will be looking for oil again. Nobody will be looking for petrol if we move into electronic cars. So I think a few days ago I saw one of the House of Representatives in Nigeria saying that electronic cars are not good for Nigerian economy, because Nigerian economy rely mainly on petrol, on oil. Can you see? All right. Then, of course, we'll talk about, in terms of pollution, you can also take into consideration the emphasis on less pollution as a result of pollution of the earth crust, which is, of course, affecting the ozone layers. And with regards also to pollution, if you're doing your past analysis, if your organization is that use some of the engines that release effluents and pollutants, certainly also there are certain environment that discourage that, or of course you'll be highly fined in terms of venturing into those kind of environment. Then of course we have of course legislation on production, consumption, and of course employment. Can you see? So those are legal issues that can also affect an organization or a business that is about to venture into a given environment. So businesses must look into most of these different factors before actually considering to move into a particular environment, which is of course known as your PESTEL analysis or PESTEL analysis. PESTEL analysis simply means political, economic, sociocultural, technological, environmental, and of course legal. Is that clear? We progress. Organizational subsystems. Every organization have subsystem. Organization being a system itself has of course a subsystem. And what are the subsystems of an organization? This is the environment. This is a social-technical approach. That is social-technical approach which involves human and of course the technology. And of course these are the tasks. These are the subsystem tasks. The environment is one of the subsystem of one of the system, series of activity, transformation or conversion process, interrelated subsystem within an organization, the social-technical such as the task, the management, the technology, the structure, the people, all these revolve around, all these are included in the organizational subsystem. In terms of the task, that is the nature of the work activities to be carried out in that particular organization. Now, in terms of technology, that is the manner in which activities are carried out. Now, in terms of structure, which is the pattern of organization and formal relationship within which activities are carried out. And of course, in terms of people, that is the nature of members undertaking the activities. Who are the people within that particular organization? What are their gender composition? How effective are they? How efficient are they in carrying out their daily routines? So these are things that one have to put into perspective. And of course, management, effective coordination of the subsystem and direction of activities of the organization as a unified whole. You can see management is at the center, coordinating all these activities for an organization to achieve their optimum objective or their intended objective. Is that clear? Great. Now, comparison between a formal and informal organization. If we want to compare a formal and informal organization, how do we compare them? In terms of, let's look at their characteristics, which is of course their features, before comparing them. In terms of structure, the first one there is A, origin. Origin. Formal organization is planned. Can you see? Formal organization is planned. That is the origin. They planned it before it came into existence. Whereas an informal organization is unplanned. It comes spontaneously. Can you see? It comes spontaneously. It is unplanned. It just emerged out of nowhere. Can you see? Then, of course, in terms of rationale, formal organization is rational. Can you see? It's rational. When we talk about rational, that is to say that something that has to do with a kind of profit. They are rational being. It has to do with monetary issue, has to do with applying senses to daily activities. So that is being rational. So rational, a formal organization is rational. They put economic interests into perspective. So they operate from a rational perspective. Why informal organization is emotional. Can you see? not really rational, they put emotion. They put emotion, they encourage themselves through emotion. They support one another through emotion. So in terms of characteristics, formal organization is stable. Can you see? It's stable because there is a particular framework where they operate. Like when I was teaching you about bureaucracy, I told you that bureaucracy believes in structure. That is to say that human beings or people within the organization may come and go, but the organization persists. Can you see? That is perpetual succession of an organization. So organization will continue to move whether people come and go. Can you see? So in that sense, a formal organization is stable, while an informal organization is dynamic. Can you see? It changes as people come and go. Can you see? Because of course, an informal organization has no structure. Can you see? It is fluid. Can you see? So people come and go. Then in terms of position terminology, formal organization in terms of position is job. You have your job in a formal organization. But in an informal organization, your position is called role. What role do you play among your friends, among your cliques? Can you see? So that is the difference between a formal organization and informal organization in terms of position that people occupy within that particular organization. And of course, in terms of goals, the goals of formal and informal organization, a formal organization, the main goal of a formal organization is profit or service to society. Can you see? Profit or service to society. Why? The main goal of an informal organization is member satisfaction. How do we satisfy ourselves? How do we combine our effort to achieve our aim? So it's actually member satisfaction. Now, with regards to influence, which is number 4, based. In terms of influence within a formal organization, influence is based on position, the position you occupy. If you are a senior manager, you occupy a senior manager position and you can influence others. But in terms of informal organization, it's personality. Who is the person? Can you see? So among friends, one person can be identified as somebody who influences everybody. Either he's a talkative, either he always cracks on jokes, either he makes people laugh, and when that person is not there, the organization seems look dysfunctional. So such kind of a person may be of influence based on his or her personality. Then, of course, we come to the next one, which is the influence type. The type of influence is authority in formal organization. Authority is what you look for in formal organization. While in informal organization, what is of perspective, what we look for is power. Power is what the type of influence, when we talk of type of influence in an informal organization. If you are the most powerful among group of friends, certainly you occupy a very strategic position. Is that clear? Then the next one there in terms of flow, in terms of flow of authority or flow of influence. In formal organization, the influence, normally the flow of authority is from top down authority, or the top influence the lower level, everybody below them. But of course, in terms of informal organization, the flow of influence is from bottom up. Can you see? Those below influence the person at the top or up. Then in terms of control mechanisms, formal organization use threat of firing, demotion, discipline, whereas informal organization normally use physical or social sanction, whereby your friends will say, we don't want to see you here again. Can you see? Or we don't want you to be in our clique, or we suspend you. So that is with regards to physical or social sanction. Then number 6, communication. With regards to communication, the channel of communication for formal organization is formal channel of communication. Whereas in informal organization, communication is through grapevine. Grapevine, that is rumors. Can you see? Can be a means of communication. Is that clear? And of course, networks. In terms of formal organization, it's a well-defined follow formal lines of control. Can you see? It's a well-defined network and follows formal lines of control or authority and subordinate relationship. Whereas in terms of the network for informal organization is poorly defined, cut across regular channels. Can you see? And of course, the next one there is speed. In terms of formal organization, the speed of doing things is quite slow because there are so many hierarchies. Can you see? In terms of formal organization. Whereas in terms of informal organization, things go fast. So few people can just gather and take decision in terms of the speed of doing things because of the few numbers and of course the less hierarchical structure within an informal organization. Then accuracy. Accuracy in terms of formal organization is high, whereas accuracy in terms of informal organization is low. Then charting the organization. Charting the organization. Organizational chart. Yeah, of course, the formal organization has their organizational chart. Can you see? And of course, other histogram. Whereas in terms of informal organization, the charting is of course a social graph. Can you see? It's not, it doesn't have a formal organizational chart. Miscellaneous. Miscellaneous individuals include all individuals in the work group. Can you see? Now, in terms of individuals include only those acceptable in terms of informal. In terms of formal, all individuals in the work group, while in terms of informal, only those accepted to be part of that group will be members of that group. Then interpersonal relationship prescribed by job description in terms of formal organization with regards to formal organization. And of course, in terms of informal organization, information arise spontaneously. Can you see? Interpersonal relationship arise spontaneously. Can you see? Prescribed interpersonal relationship in formal is prescribed by the job description by the organization, how they describe the job they do. But of course, in terms of informal organization, information arise spontaneously. Is that clear? Then, of course, leadership role. Leadership role in terms of formal organization is assigned by the organization, whereas leadership role in informal organization is a result of members' agreement. Can you see? So these are the two differences between formal organization and informal. And the basis for interaction. Formal organization interact through functional duties or position, whereas the informal organization, personal characteristics, ethnic background, and of course status is their means of interaction. Basis for attachment. In terms of formal organization, what is expected is loyalty. You have to be loyal to your organization. Then, of course, in terms of informal organization, what is expected is cohesiveness. Can you see? They are cohesive in some of their relationship and how they deal with work. Functions of the informal organization. What are the functions? Why is informal organization sometimes important? Or what role do they play within an organization? Or what are their functions? The first important thing there is that they satisfy their members. Satisfaction of members' social need. Their interest is to satisfy members' social need. at least socializing. For instance, after work, they can go to Shabin or go to one joint to drink together, interact, and if you are a smoker, they smoke together also. So these are satisfaction of social need. Also, they plan how they celebrate the party and a kind of a sense of belonging. Then, of course, informal organization serves as an additional channel of communication, which is, of course, grapevine, rumors. Can you see? Rumors. Did you hear? Or do you know? Can you see? Rumors. That is how it starts. Can you see? Can you see? So, those are, of course, one of the functions. Another function of informal organization. Additional channel of communication, which is, of course, the grapevine. And, of course, another function of informal organization is that they serve as means of motivation. Can you see? Of course, a good manager can use the informal organization to motivate members of that organization. Can you see? And of course, informal organization members can motivate themselves also as members to achieve a particular aim or objective. Feeling of stability and security. Can you see? Being a member of an informal organization gives you a kind of sense of stability, that you belong to a group. Can you see? And of course, it gives you a sense of security. Can you see? That yes, I'm a member of this group, and they will watch my back for me in case of certain challenges within the workplace. And of course, means of highlighting deficiencies. Means of highlighting deficiencies or weaknesses in the formal organization. So informal organization can also be used, or one of their functions is also they try to look at things from different perspectives, and as such, identify some of the challenges, some of the deficiencies or weaknesses within the formal organization. They can even criticize the leadership of the formal organization. So these are some of the functions of an informal organization. Is that clear? Great. Now, according to ACAS categories of workplace conflict, we're now moving into work conflict. I say workplace conflict. There are different forms of conflict. We have organized conflict, can you see, such as strike action and occupations. Can you see? Strike action and occupation. When we talk about strike action, that is when people decide to strike and refuse to work or refuse to come to workplace to execute the work. So that is strike action. When we talk about occupation, sometimes you hear people in America saying, let us occupy New York, or let us occupy Washington to protest. So it's part of a protest, can you see, where you occupy a particular street. And of course, we hear that also issues of, say, let's occupy Pretoria, or let's occupy Johannesburg, or let's occupy, of course, let's occupy the parliament, you know, where people protest and express their anger or their grievances about certain issues within societies. You can remember the recent violence against women when people decided to occupy the parliament, you know, as a way of expressing their grievances. Then, of course, we have what we call overt individual conflict, overt individual conflict, which is an example of that, which is, of course, grapevines. And, of course, we have latent conflict. Latent conflict, of course, manifests through absenteeism. Can you see? Overt grievances. Grievances. When we talk about overt, which manifests in the form of grievances, where you show your anger and you physically display your displeasure, can you see, to certain issues within the workplace, or certain issues that are taking place in the way things are done in your workplace. But when we talk about latent conflict manifests through absenteeism, turnover, underperformance, and of course, fractious interpersonal relationship. Can you see? In fact, latent conflict can be more dangerous than the overt conflict. Can you see? Because latent conflict are conflict that you cannot see people reflecting or people exhibiting those conflicts. They can become absent from work and send a signal to you as a manager. They can, of course, decide to abandon their work post. They can also decide to be at work but underperforming, and you are not seeing that. And of course, they can also be a kind of creating a lot of confusion, fractures, interpersonal relationships such as intimidating fellow workers, bullying, and unnecessary victimization of other members of staff. So this can have, in fact, affect the organization in a very bad way. All right. So now organizational conflict. I don't want to stop because I noticed that the battery of my iPad is running low. But we will continue until we get to a certain level. But let's try to cover the conflict topic. Organizational conflict. There are different perspectives to organizational conflict. We have the unitarist perspective, which of course sees organization as a harmonious whole. That is, organization is harmonious whole. Can you see? Under such organization, conflict is considered as dysfunctional. Can you see? In other words, conflict is not allowed. There is a kind of sanctity and harmony between the manager and the subordinates. Everybody is working in tandem, and everybody is enjoying the environment, and everybody is loyal to the management and, of course, loyal to the organization. You see? And conflict in such organization is regarded as dysfunctional. It's not permitted. It's not allowed. So if you are coming with conflict, in fact, you should look for elsewhere, or you should leave the organization, or you will be forced to leave, as the case may be. Then, of course, we have the pluralist perspective. Pluralist perspective is of the view that conflict between subgroup is inevitable in an organization in terms of organizational conflict. The pluralist perspective believes that conflict between groups within an organization is inevitable. It must be handled and managed carefully. Can you see? So conflict is bound to happen. But what we need to do is to try as much as possible to manage it within an allowable limit. Can you see? And of course, we have the next perspective, which is, of course, the radical perspective. And this is where the people like Kamas belong, radical perspective. That is to say, radical perspective is of the view that conflict is a challenge to the established order. Is that clear? A challenge to the established order. It results from power struggle between capital and labor. And that is why Kamas is of the view that labor should unite and wrestle the capital and wrestle the capital from the capitalists, and wrestle the means of production from the capitalists. Can you see? And wrestle the industry from the capitalists. Can you see? So it results from power struggle between capital and labor, and reconciliation is not ultimately possible. Can you see? Because the perspective of Kamas, for instance, is that there is no relationship between labor and capital. There is no relationship between the capitalists and the employees. In fact, when Kamas look at capital, what he sees is exploitation. When Kamas look at the workplace, what he sees is exploitation. The exploitation of the capitalists. The exploitation of the working class by the capitalists. Can you see? So he is of the view that for the working class to emerge, for the working class to overcome this exploitation, they need to wrestle the means of production from the capitalists. That is the only way we can achieve an equal society, an egalitarian society, and a society that everybody is respected and valued. And of course, some of those thoughts were things that triggered most of the communist ideas. For instance, the communist idea in former Soviet Union, and of course, for instance, the farmers' revolution in China and different parts of the world also. And of course, some of the tendencies of the Eastern Germans. All right. Then, of course, we have the other school of thought, the interactionist perspective. In terms of their own perspective, they believe that conflict is a positive force. Can you see? Conflict is a positive force. Can you see? And they encourage self-criticism, change, and innovation. That is to say, in fact, this kind of perspective, or this interactionist perspective, believe that sometimes even managers should encourage conflict. Because conflict brings about new ideas, new ways of thinking, innovation. And of course, it brings criticism that will bring about new ways of doing things. So it encourages dissidence, within a given society or within a given organization. Conflict is healthy. According to the interactionists, said conflict is healthy. A good manager doesn't try to eliminate conflict. Can you see? A good manager doesn't try to eliminate conflict. He tries to keep it from wasting the energies of his people. If you are the boss and your people fight you openly when they think you are wrong, that is healthy. That is a good conflict. If your people fight each other openly in your presence for what they believe in, that is healthy. But keep all the conflict eyeball to eyeball. Watch it that it doesn't actually exceed the limit that is expected of an organization. Otherwise, it can turn to dysfunctional conflict. So all conflict that brings about innovation, criticism are functional conflict, but all conflict that leads an organization into chaos and into infighting are dysfunctional conflicts. Some sources of conflict. What are the sources of conflict in organization? The first one, the differences in perception. Limited resources can make people to fight over resources. Can you see? For instance, you can see most nations now fighting as a result of resources. If you take, for instance, the perspective in Nigeria, where the Niger Delta people are fighting because they feel that the oil is not properly distributed. The wealth from the oil money is not properly distributed. That is a good example of conflict. Limited resources. Departmentalization and specialization. The different departments within an organization, if they have to work in sequential orders, that can lead to conflict, where one department is a kind of protecting their own. Can you see? And of course, somebody telling you that this is not your specialty. Can you see? That you must mind your specialty. HR does not interfere in finance. Can you see? So that can bring about conflict. The nature and interdependency of work activities. Can you see? The nature and interdependency, how we depend on one another in terms of our work. After this one work, it can lead to conflict. Role conflict. The roles within the organization, where you are reporting to two managers. It can bring about conflict. Inequitable treatment. Can you see? Inequity in terms of treatment. Inequitable treatment can, of course, bring about conflict where some people are favored and others are treated badly. Then, of course, violation of territory, where people begin to enter other people's territory within the workplace, encroaching into what they do, investigating them, and of course, trying to find fault. That can lead to conflict in the organization. Environmental changes also can bring about conflict, where organizations decide to also change the way they operate. That can lead to also conflict within an organization. Management of conflict. How do we manage conflict in an organization? Clarification of goals and objective is one way. Let's clarify the goals and objective. Proper distribution of resources within an organization or within a nation can reduce the tendencies for conflict or conflict in an organization. Human resources policies and procedures must be used to control conflict within an organization so that people will respect policies and procedures. Because it gives demarcation what you are entitled to and what you are not entitled to, and how to